Hello, this is 1.2. This is the muscle roles, and the four functional groups in the muscle roles are the prime mover, which is also known as the agonist, has the largest workload and responsible for the movement. The antagonist, which creates a slight resistance, lengthens inner bicep contraction, prevents an overshoot, so an over contraction, which can cause injury and tear in the muscle fiber. The synergist, which assists the prime mover, adds force to stabilize the movement. The fixator, which stabilizes an immobilized bone, reduces any unwanted movement to reduce any chance of injury. The movement is controlled by the agonist and the antagonist. The synergist and the fixator are the assisters of the movement, and the tendon attachments are with the origin and insertion. The origin is at the point of fixation. This joint moves, inserts motion to an insertion point on the muscle, and the insertion is the point of the muscle movement. This diagram is used to show the antagonist and the agonist, or the prime mover. So the muscle that shortens to move a joint is called the agonist, also known as the prime mover. This is the muscle that produces the most force and is responsible for the contraction and the movement taking place. In this diagram on the left, right here, the biceps are contracted and the triceps are relaxed. The tricep relaxes here as the bicep contracts, shortening, pulling this bone upwards in the contraction. In this diagram on the right, the triceps are contracted, lengthening, the biceps are relaxed, lengthening, so the bone can move back, extending back to its original position. The muscle that relaxes in opposition to the agonist is called the antagonist. In this diagram, this section, this would be the antagonist, this triceps brachii right here. This is the muscle that is responsible for allowing the movement by relaxing and lengthening. Therefore, right here, this tricep lengthens and relaxes as the bicep contracts and shortens to create movement at the elbow joint in the bicep curl. The antagonists act as a sort of slowing resistor or almost a brake to the movement of the agonists on lowering movements. Right here, as the bicep relaxes, the tricep acts as a resistor. So as the forearm is extended back out, the movement isn't too quick, so that it could injure the biceps or the triceps brachii or the joint, any of the bones involved in this movement if it was to go too fast. The triceps brachii allow the slower movement extension so that no injury can happen here. The excessive injury, the excessive movement will cause injury, and this resistance, this break of the triceps in this antagonistic movement is preventing this. One important piece of information to note is that in each position, each different movement, each different movement, any different role, the functional groups are different. So in one movement, the prime mover or the agonist will be different in the next movement where it could be the antagonist. This changes and has to be mentioned each movement to clarify and be specific about which is actually doing that job. Now, the synergists assist the prime mover. They add force and stabilize where the movement happens. They are the muscles that work together to enable the agonists to work more effectively. So in this diagram, this branchiodoralis is a muscle in the forearm, and in this section here shows much better that this lower part of the brachialis is the synergist. This part here allows this part this bone on the upwards force of when the guy this hand is pulling upwards in the bicep curl motion when he's got the glass of liquid in his hand. The biceps brachii are the prime mover in this situation. It's contracting, shortening. This branchiolaris is the synergist assisting the prime mover, allowing the branchialis to contract even more efficiently and effectively. It also modifies the direction of movement. They work with the agonists. Together to make the movement much more effective. Less energy, less strain, less stress, so that the movement can be done easier. They work with the agonists to control and direct the movement in one plane. The synergists are located either side of the agonist muscles. So this is the prime mover, the agonist. This the branchiolaris synergist. This is the branchialis, the other synergist. This is where the movement is stabilized, allowing the biceps brachii to be the prime mover, to take on the force, take on the largest workload of moving this cup upwards in a flexion motion. Now this diagram here shows the shoulder bone with the clavicle, the humerus here, all these sections, all these very complex parts of the shoulder and the clavicle area. This is showing what a fixator does. This stabilizes an immobilized bone. So for example, right at the shoulder blade, at the clavicle, this muscle stabilized an immobilized bone, so a bone that does not move, reduces any unwanted movement that could happen there when a contraction happens. So for example, when moving, when swinging a bat at maximum speed, at maximum power, to try and hit the ball as hard as you can in tennis, cricket, when taking contact in rugby, this muscle stops any unwanted movement of the bone. An isometric contraction can increase the tone, but no movement is produced. Fixators do this by stabilizing the joint or multiple joints involved. These fixators are located around the origin of a joint. So for example, any movement coming from this direction, this direction, this direction, the muscles around these areas are able to stop any unwanted movement through isometric contraction, where you increase the tone, the contraction, but no movement is produced. No movement is produced. So this diagram is being used to show the origin and insertion of a movement taking place as a bicep brachii contraction. So, for example, this bicep brachii is going to be contracting, this tricep brachii is going to be relaxing. The movement is going from downwards to upwards in a bicep curl motion, a flexion motion, and this is the origin and insertion. So these are the heads of the bicep brachii. You see the head of the tricep brachii here. This is the insertion on the radius, so where the muscle connects with the radius at the tendon point here, bone to muscle through the dense fibrous connective collagen fibers. This is the point of the muscle movement. So this point is where the muscle moves, down this point. The origin up here, the two heads of the biceps brachii, are the point of fixation. So this point is fixed. This point is fixed. This joint moves, inserts the motion through the biceps brachii into the insertion point on the muscle.